Welcome, everybody, to the first episode of Humanize Automation. I'm your host, Dr. Jill Schiefelbein, and I am so excited to get to set the stage for the many inspiring, innovative, and exciting conversations that are to come on this show. I want to start by telling you a little bit about where this show came from, and of course, a little bit about me, so you know who is leading the conversations with amazing people in this space. One of my personal beliefs is that I believe we all have some sort of passion that we really geek out on, something that we're not only passionate about, but where our unique combination of experiences and knowledge combine that allow us to contribute to the world in a meaningful way. For me personally, that is the intersections of communication, education, and technology. In fact, if you were to make a personal Venn diagram for me as a professional person, you take communication in one circle, education in another, technology in another, and right in that central space, right in that overlap is where my passion lies. And I've made this space my home for over 20 years. Now, don't get me wrong, I have other passions too. I love to travel and hike and crochet. Side note, if the zombie apocalypse ever does come, crocheting is my post-apocalyptic skill. I'm telling you, I can make clothing, bags, netting, bedding, whatever you need out of tons of different materials. You want me on your team. All joking aside, doing that and of course crafting a great bourbon cocktail are some of the things that make me smile. But what makes me smile professionally is why I started this show, Humanize Automation, and why I feel it is so important to be able to bring to light what is possible when you take a combination of human capabilities and a combination of computer capabilities and you make those things collide. Within that space, there is magic. And over the coming episodes, that magic is what we're going to uncover. Right now, I think it is a very pivotal time in the evolution of how humans and computers interact. And if you really think about it, like rewind with me real quick and take a little history lesson, a trip down memory lane, if you will. We've had humans and machines interacting for quite a long time. It didn't start with the Industrial Revolution. It started way, way before that, but I'm not here to be a history professor. I am here, though, to kind of walk you through the evolution of where we are today, especially in this rapidly expanding field of generative AI. So when you look at kind of the history of AI, going back to 1956 at the Dartmouth conference when it used to be called synthetic intelligence, and actually that is when the term artificial intelligence came to light. So going back to the 1950s, we have had the foundations and the underpinnings of the AI applications and tools that we're using today. But fast forward almost 70 years and we're in a very different position. The advancements in computing, in processing speed, in memory and capabilities, not to mention, my goodness, the internet, all of these things have now started to advance more and more and more rapidly the capabilities that computers and artificial intelligence can bring to human-computer collaborations. And where we're at right now, if we really think about it, generative AI only came on the scene mainstream, not even 2 years ago. This was late fall 2022 when it came on the scene. But yet the impact that it's had in such a short time in our businesses warrants, I believe, conversations around not only what is possible and not only what our best practices, but really how we can use these tools to be more human. In this course and certificate program I'm taking at MIT right now, one of my professors shared the term with us, collective intelligence. And while I've never phrased it this way, it very succinctly summarizes what I have believed for years is the true capacity that we can have when we combine the best of human intelligence and the best of computer intelligence together. We create this collective intelligence, which is better than either the human or the machine on its own could do. And I think for me, when I think of how does humanizing automation play a role in that, it is, to me, the best of the best collective intelligence. It is where we can create this level playing field for organizations of all sizes. And in doing so, we allow people in all different industries, from all different backgrounds, in all different locations, with all different business goals, with all different sizes of business, from the micro entrepreneur and solopreneur to the Fortune 500 company. Everyone can have access to leveraging these tools and moving the needle forward for their business. And I think that is a bit of a democratization of access that is quite appealing. And that theme, kind of democratization of access, is going to come up a little later here in the show once again. But this evolution, this kind of moment in time where we're at now, where the fear of AI is still there a little bit, but the excitement and the awe and the potential for it are overwhelmingly positive. And that's where we focus here. That's where I lead into this show. So why humanizing automation? When I think of what it means to humanize automation, I want to go back to the core of it all. I sincerely believe that at the core of it all, we as humans, we want to be seen. We want to be understood, and we want to feel like we belong to something, and something bigger than just ourselves. I mean, I'm not going to go down the psychology rabbit hole of Maslow's hierarchy of needs here, citing Abraham Maslow, because I'm a good academic like that. When you look at this, you have your, physiological needs, you have food, water, etc. You have your safety needs, and then you have your sense of belonging before you get into your own identity and the epitome of that, the self-actualization. And when you look at the base level, outside of surviving physiologically and feeling safe, we want to feel like we belong. And in that belonging, we can even better find ourselves. But what does that mean for business owners? Well, it means those business owners that are making their customers. And when I say customer here, I mean both your internal customers, your employees, your team members, and then also your external ones, the people who are buying your products or services. You are making them feel seen, making them feel understood. And if you can do that as a business owner, that is true power, not only for you as a manager, as a leader, as an entrepreneur, but it's also power for those on the receiving end of that. So when you're running a business, it's really difficult sometimes to balance, if you're weighing on the scale, I want to be efficient, but I also want to be effective. And a lot of times those two don't go both up at the same time. You typically do one at the expense of the other. But that's where these tools come in. We now can simultaneously have more efficiency and more effectiveness when you link these tool sets together well. When you combine and leverage artificial intelligence and especially generative AI with your existing data set, with your customer data, with your product data, with your process data, when you have this in motion, when you have data fluidity between all of these things, the things that you can automate can actually lead to more human experiences. Ergo, humanize automation. When I think of what it's all about, it's helping you more efficiently and effectively letting all of the people that you interact with in your business be seen, feel understood, feel like they're catered to, yet let them still feel like they are a part of something. None of us, that I know of anyway, enjoy being a number. We want to know that the companies that we're interacting with know us, understand us, can recommend the best solutions, the best services, the best products. We like to have solutions fed to us and handed over on a silver platter. We like to have people we know and trust giving us advice that we can just take and put into action. We can now do this if we're strategic about it. And the conversations that I plan to bring to light on this show are conversations with entrepreneurs, with leaders, with managers, with innovators who are finding great, practical, applied ways to leverage not only the existing data they have and tool sets that they have or will acquire, but combining these things in a way that not only increases their efficiency, but helps their customer have a better experience at the end. All right. It's probably very clear to you now that for me, to humanize automation is about not only leveraging the technologies to create efficiencies in business, but it's also about doing it in a way that will simultaneously bring out the best about our humanness. And that is our ability to really form connections and forge relationships. Again, that idea of collective intelligence, that we combine the human awesomeness with computer awesomeness and blow it up together. That's when we can really make a difference. But why this is so important to me is, I think, important for me to share, because you'll better understand the lens that I'm bringing to the conversations that I'm going to have with all of you in my audience and the guests on this show. I want to rewind with you a little bit to the late 1980s and early 1990s. Come back with me to my hometown of Pittsburg, Kansas. Shout out to anyone from Pittsburgh who is listening in. Appreciate you. Pittsburgh, Kansas, when I grew up, was a town of about 10, 12,000 people. And then when the university was in session, a few more thousand were added to that population. So it wasn't the tiniest town on the planet, but it was a pretty small town. We were fortunate in that we did have a Division II university, so there was a pretty robust library that we could visit and some other resources that we had. But overall, if I wanted to go to the equivalent of, let's say, a Target, it was at least a 40-minute plus drive. And if I wanted to go to a department store, let's talk about 2 to 2.5 hours driving up north to the Kansas City area. And when I rewind back, I think of my life growing up and how, as a little girl, and thank you to the many years of therapy that led me to these discoveries, that I really wanted to feel seen and I wanted to feel understood, and I didn't. I moved late in my kindergarten year to this town in Pittsburgh, Kansas, where our schooling where I was at was different, a little more advanced. And when I started in school, I was quite a bit ahead of a lot of the other kids, which, as we know now, often can lead to bullying behavior and other things. And that was no exception for me. I felt so different from all the other kids in my class, but all I really wanted to do was belong. I wanted to fit in. I think like most children do. Heck, most adults do, if we're honest. And in trying to do that, I failed miserably. In fact, I was bullied pretty heavily. And I think that's a story a lot of entrepreneurs share, is we were misunderstood. And that bullying was, of course, emotional and verbal, that type of thing. Thank goodness social media wasn't around then. I can't even imagine what that's like going through today. But for me, it was also physical, from getting my food spit in to being shoved against walls and having welts on my head. I had my nose shattered going into a merry-go-round. It was not the happiest school place for me. And when I was in school, I poured myself into doing not only the best I could academically, even though I didn't understand that at the time, but what I knew is when I achieved something, I got praise from the teacher and I got praise from my parents, and that felt good. And it was really the only time that it felt good in childhood. Now, don't get me wrong. I have amazing parents and I have a great family, but they're not there day to day when you're in school and the kids are acting out and, physically shoving you and doing the things that, went down. And so what did I do was I channeled myself not only into those academics, but also into art. And I actually found a lot of joy in art, from drawing and coloring, of course, when I was little, and then painting became a thing. So much so that by the time I was in third grade, I was winning national competitions for poster designing at scale, local competitions as well. And I loved it so much. And my parents saw this and they saw my development. They decided they were going to get me an art tutor, a private art tutor. And I was so excited to work with her, Janine. I loved Miss Janine. And it was amazing. In the short time, spoiler, it's only 6 months really that I got to work with her, my skills increased. I felt seen and understood by this person who took their time to work with me. And I had an outlet for so much of what I was going through. But then what often happens in a small town is people that are talented get opportunities in bigger cities. And in the late 1980s and early 1990s, my art teacher did, and Janine left. And then there was nobody. Now, of course I tried, right? Bob Ross and I, oh yeah, we had quite the intimate relationship, but no matter how many times I watched that show, my trees were not quite so happy. My clouds were not quite so fluffy. I needed that personalized instruction. I'd go to the library, try to get books, but to no avail. And that talent kind of died off in me. Now, I still like to be creative. It's still a great outlet, but I'll never be what I think I could have been in that area if I had had access, not only to information, but to teaching, to skills, to hands-on instruction, or now that we can do it, virtual instruction that's live in real time to help me develop. I mean, if this was today, we could have brought Janine in via Zoom and she could have been critiquing my brushstrokes and angling my hands slightly different and giving me more ideas. But that technology didn't exist back then. So the thing that made me feel safe, the thing that made me feel most understood and most seen and gave me my biggest outlet for expression, it wasn't taken away from me, but the level of it was diminished. Now, fast forward through junior high and high school, where we won't go down those paths today, but I get into college. And in 2002, I met a professor, Dr. Steve Corman. Shout out to you, Dr. Corman, because you changed more about my life than you probably realize. He had developed one of the first online courses in higher ed. Now, it was very rudimentary. It had some text, it had a couple documents you could download. There was no video, there was no audio, there was no anything. But what there was in that course, the first time I had ever seen it, was the most basic of basic chatbots. And I'm talking basic, everybody. But I was hooked. And I thought, man, I could have had this type of technology when I was little, how that would have changed. I mean, the internet alone changed things. So the next year in 2003, I developed my first online course as an assistant instructor as part of my capstone in undergraduate, which was very fortunate they let me do that. And I picked up on it really quick. And what I found was that I got so passionate about understanding how students would interact with the online courses. See the trend here, how humans would interact with technology, that I became obsessed with finding the best way to communicate. Yep, there's my third bubble, to make sure that those students had a great experience in integrating and interacting with that technology. And it became my thing. In 2004, when I started my master's, I was developing more online courses. In 2006, when I graduated, I was hired as a full-time faculty, even with just a master's, to be able to build up this type of curriculum and this type of technology. And then by the next year, I was literally heading up an entire department in my mid-20s that focused only on building out online education. In 2006, 2007, I started making my first online videos. In 2008, I ran my first live webinar. Oh man, shout out to Adobe Connect. That was a software back then. But what I found there is became something that really has set with me for a long time and that I find myself coming back to today, which is that I was so passionate about making sure that no matter who you were, that no matter where you were located, if you needed to take an online course because you didn't have the capability to come to campus because of geographical distance, because of maybe you were a caretaker, maybe you were a single parent, maybe you needed to work odd hours and you couldn't make the class hours, whatever it was, I didn't want your life situation to be the reason you didn't get a quality education. And not only quality education in terms of materials and books, but quality education in terms of the interactive and engaging experiences that you could have. Did I think online education could completely replace in person? Of course not. Did I think it was the same thing? No, it's apples and oranges. However, I truly believed that in training professors and educators on how to engage in a virtual space, we would have a much more productive output, more enhanced and enriched learning environment, and better outcomes for students. Turns out that was right. And that path that I never saw myself going down because I taught myself how to code and really got involved with this was what turns out to be the passion that drives me to where I'm at today. That democratization of information and that democratization of access is such a passion of mine that when we jump forward now to like 2015, 2016, when Zoom was a relative newcomer on the block, I was using it all the time. My last book, published in 2017, was done in conjunction with about 28 different Zoom interviews that were used as part of the book. Many of the people interviewed, it was their first exposure to Zoom ever. The CEO of Zoom, Eric Yuan, is also in that book, actually. And I started telling people about this. You guys, this technology, we now have a seamless way to have synchronous video. I mean, Adobe Connect was amazing back in its day, but it was a little clunky. And then Zoom came along and made this streamlined and super easy. I was telling my clients about it in 2018 and in 2019 saying, please let me train your teams. I worked with a lot of sales teams. Let me train them on how they can leverage this tool in their sales arsenal. And you know what those clients said to me then? They said, oh, Jill, this will never take on. We're in a human business. Well, we all know what happened next. 2020 came along, and then all of a sudden, Zoom took the world by storm. And now there's lots of different options that have improved, and some of it was because of forced improvement necessary to still stay competitive and to meet the needs of customers. We now know that we can run insanely effective virtual experiences, be them education, be them live meetings, be them massive conferences and events. But again, it's how humans leverage the best of themselves with the best of technology combined to make these insanely meaningful experiences. And now with this burgeoning field of generative AI and synthetic media, I find myself so drawn to it, so much so that in the middle of my doctorate program, which I finished in December of 2023, I ended up tossing out early on the dissertation work I had been doing and that I planned to do and turned it all over to synthetic media and generative AI within sales context because I truly believed then, and absolutely even more believe now, that we can leverage these tools and communication abilities to be more human, allowing us to get our likeness across, get our presence across, automate and personalize and help people feel seen, and then enabling our actual human selves to be in the mix more, to be in the trenches more, to be interacting with people live and in real time more, instead of messing with a lot of this minutia and administrative stuff on this side. And that now, to me, democratizes the ability of large versus small companies to get in the game. So you see these themes of democratization of access. You see these things of access to quality information and experiences. And for 20 years, this is a space I have inhabited. And I'm so excited to have been put in a situation when I was younger that forced me not only to dive into something to feel seen and known, but to also understand very much what it was to not feel seen and to not feel known. Because I believe that that perspective combined with decades of study in human communication and human communicative behavior and the same level of study in technology and human computer interaction and synthetic media and generative AI, combine that lens, it is my sincere hope, can bring practical applied solutions that allow you, no matter what role you play in business, to be able to be more effective at what you do, more efficient at what you do, and ultimately more human at what you do. So not only you are more seen, but the people you interact with are more seen as well. Thanks for walking with me a little bit down memory lane, but I feel it's important. If you're going to be listening to a show, you want to know the lens that the host is coming from, because we all have a bias. Now you know where mine is coming from, and you also know where some of my experience is coming from. Of course, throughout the episodes, you're going to hear more tidbits dropped in here and there. What I want to kind of end with in this opening episode is a bit of a framework, if you will, a bit of a framework to get you to understand where I will steer some of the conversations in the future, where I think anyone can look at this simple framework, especially these 3 points right now, and start to look at their business, their processes, their systems, their day-to-day operations, maybe through a different lens to help you get ahead faster. Here are these 3 tips. Number 1, you will be exceptional at your ability to humanize automation when you, number 1, understand each touch point involved in your customer experience. Again, understand each touch point involved in your customer experience. And remember, your customer, can be internal, meaning your employees, your team, etc. Maybe it's onboarding your future employees, or it can be external, the people that you serve, the people that you sell to. But you really need to work on understanding every communicative touch point involved along a customer's experience, along their journey with you, because it was within these touch points that you have the ability to not only automate for more efficiency, but also the ability to personalize at scale. And when you're doing this, you'll be better able to think strategically, perhaps about what tools you want to integrate, what strategies you need to look for, what use cases you need to have your ear always out and listening for. So number one, again, is understand each touch point involved in your customer's experience with you. Number two, you will really get ahead and be able to better humanize automation when you, two, focus on the feelings that you want your customers to have during their journey. Yeah, that's right. I said that F word, feelings. We often, as business owners, managers, leaders, get so focused on our goals, on our KPIs, the key performance indicators, that we get so lost in those objectives and measurable instances that we forget, not intentionally. I don't think any of us are mean-spirited or bad-hearted by nature, but we forget that we also need to have the customer's feeling at front and center, not just their experience overall, but their specific feeling. What I mean by that is, what do you want your customer to be feeling when they get this email from you versus when they get this video from you versus when their product is delivered or versus when they sign a contract? Where do you want them mentally and emotionally in every touch point in your customer experience? Start to think about that so you add feeling goals along with your tangible metric-based goals in your customer experience journey. And last but not least right now, the third way you know that you can get better and be able to humanize automation amazingly in your business is if you reframe your processes so that you prioritize the feeling, the goal, and then the output. Here's what I mean by that. A lot of people start with the tool first and then retrofit a tool into their goals, objectives, etc. I'm going to encourage you not to do that. You'll be really great at your ability to humanize automation when you actually reframe your thinking and you actually start with the feeling in mind, then the goal, and then the output, that touch point. Again, feeling, goal, and output. So by understanding the touch points involved, focus on the feelings you want to have and then reframing the processes with that priority in mind. Again, feelings, goals, and outputs. You're going to see a different train of thought, a different lens, a different framework when you're making decisions on communication and technology and even possibly some education within your business. Before we wrap this first episode up, I want to walk you through with a little more detail those 3 tips for helping you humanize automation in your business: the understand, focus, and reframe. Let me give you a little bit more that you can do to be thinking about between episodes, because that's what a good show does, right? It leaves you thinking and wanting to process between episodes, and that is my goal here. So first and foremost, the first tip is understand, right? We want to understand the different touch points, each and every one that are involved in your customer experience. What that means is you actually need to map out from discovery to engagement to execution to continuation, those 4 main stages of customer experience. You need to map out what each and every one of the touch points you have with your customer is along the way. And in doing so, really looking at the touch point from a, not only what channel is it communicated in? Is it email? Is it a blog post? Is it a video? Is it an educational? Is it a pamphlet? Is it a one-on-one meeting? Is it a live meeting? Whatever it may be, look at each communicative touch point along the way. And for humanizing automation, I find it really useful if after you've identified all of those touch points, you look for 3 different areas within those. And if any of these 3 areas exist, and I imagine they will because no business is perfect, even when you're an expert in communication and customer experience like I am, I continually evaluate and evolve and, remaneuver our customers' experience based on things I learn and test along the way. So there is no such thing as perfection here. It's really awareness of all of these steps that you need to have. And that's what I'm trying to get across here. But within all of those different touch points, think of these three things. And if any of these apply to you, or all of them apply to you, or in multiple places, fine. This is where you can target for maybe an AI tool intervention, or a data intervention, or a technology intervention, or an automation intervention. The number one thing here we can look for is friction. What I mean by friction is this touch point just takes too much work to make it happen. It is inefficient. There are bottlenecks involved. Maybe if you are the owner of, let's say, a smaller business, or you're the manager of a team, same thing in this instance, where everyone has to eventually come through you to get feedback before something can be sent out. That means you are a bottleneck. No matter how great you are, we all have times where we get backlogged. So identify areas of friction. Takes too long. Man, these proposals, they take so long to get done every time. How could I make these shorter? Bam, that is a touch point where we can target an intervention. Oh man, it always takes me so long to review all of these things. I need to get them back sooner. Bam, that's some friction. We can target an intervention in there. Look for friction first. The next thing you can look for is frustration. That one's pretty easy to explain. It's something that you simply don't enjoy. Like me, I loathe invoicing. It is something that I don't enjoy at all. And so it was one of the first things that I outsourced when I brought a virtual assistant on board years and years and years ago in my business. So things that you don't enjoy doing, that is some frustration that is in there. So what is that for you? And it may be multiple touch points along the way. Think of where you get frustrated. And a lot of times that can come in the form of when you're being asked too many questions, or even worse, the same question over and over and over again. Now, if you're being asked the same question over and over again, that's probably not only frustrating for you, but also a big clue that that touch point in your customer's experience needs to be addressed. Because either the message is not hitting correctly, or the channel it's delivered in is not landing in the way that you're intending. So again, looking at your touch points with both friction and frustration in mind. And then last but not least, also with attrition in mind, that drop off. Think of what they call in e-commerce the abandoned cart syndrome, where you put something in a cart, but then you go to click off on that X and you decide not to order. Well, smart e-commerce companies track that data and use that to more effectively market to you, to communicate with you, to give you a different experience in the future. And of course, they want to recoup those sales. They don't want you to abandon the cart. So where do you have that drop off in your business? Where are people abandoning your cart? Is it when, for example, let's say you are in the travel industry and you're a luxury travel advisor and people are so excited to work with you, and then all of a sudden they learn that you charge a fee for your services. I mean, heaven forbid a professional charging a fee. Yikes. But yet you know that of the people you talk to, 25% of people don't follow through after that. Well, that would mean to me, number one, we can measure that with any intervention, which is awesome because data is sexy, my friends. But two, it also means that a touch point before you're talking about the fee needs to be changed in some way to make sure that that is understood sooner in the process, that there's more education there, that maybe there's some more personalized information that's given. Whatever that is, there's something earlier on that needs to be addressed. So again, in understanding your touch points, look for friction, frustration, or attrition and drop off. And in those are first places that are ripe with opportunities for you to target for humanized automation interventions, including generative AI, other AI tools, some machine learning, perhaps some data sync and data fluidity. And if none of that made sense to you, don't worry about it. Identifying those areas is what's most important right now, because you're going to get more of those solutions in upcoming episodes spelled out for you. The second thing that I talked about to make you great at being able to humanize automation in your business is to focus on the feelings. Yes, that F word, feelings, that you want your customers to have during their journey with you. Think of each and every touch point and what feeling you want to elicit from them. It's pretty easy to identify the business goal that you have for that, but to pinpoint a feeling you want a client or potential client to be feeling and experiencing and emoting with during that time is a little bit more of a challenge. So take some time, do it, and think that out. And then you have to ask yourself, once you've identified that feeling, does your touch point elicit that feeling? Take, for example, a meeting with a consultant that you're going to have. Maybe you're going to have a discovery call, and this could be in any industry here. You're going to have a discovery call with a consultant to see if it's the right fit for you and your business, for you and your particular need. And you go to this person's website or this company's website, you fill out a form, and then what do you get? A generic thank you page and an autoresponder email confirming the date of your appointment. I don't know anyone getting warm fuzzies from automated responses. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't have automated responses. In fact, the opposite. You absolutely should have some type of way to confirm events, appointments, and communication within your business. But if your goal is, say, to have somebody feeling curious before their appointment with you, that's the emotion you want them to be feeling, you need to customize that automation. You need to humanize that automation to help elicit some of that curiosity. On the thank you page that comes up, can you have maybe a quiz that they fill out to learn more about their preferred consultative style so that you know that information about them coming in and they start to think about how they want to be worked with in advance? Talk about making it a more productive discovery call right off the bat. Can you, in your automations with the system, maybe you use Calendly, for example, within that, you can absolutely customize those responses and the reminders and everything that goes out. So, you can even add some videos to your calendar scheduling pages and responses. Another great way to add more humanization, a more human element, helping people feel more seen during those automated experiences. So they're automated for efficiency. They're automated to make the customer feel safe and secure in knowing that you're on top of it, but then it's personalized, now letting them see and feel like they belong, that they're recognized, that they're an individual. That is power. All right, the third and final point of how you can be great if you want to humanize automation is to reframe, again, the processes that you're using and how you're thinking about it. For each touch point, we want to focus first on the feeling, then the goal, and then the output. I know so many people who work with customer service. It's like, oh, we need to make sure they know about XYZ. Let's send an email, without thinking, okay, they need to know about XYZ, but why do they need to know about it? When do they need to know about it? And then how do they need to know about it? Which is, again, the email. But I ask you to take one more step, and is how do you want them to feel when they're experiencing that? So when you try to retrofit feelings into tools that you already have, unless you get very, very lucky and you have the most amazing tool set, retrofitting feelings into tools doesn't exactly work. And it's a lot of frustration trying to make that happen. And I find that if you focus first on the outcome, then you can select the right tool or technology. And before you then focus on the outcome, from this tip, you need to focus on the goal and the feeling. So the tech is actually the fourth step here. Feeling, goal, the output, and then the technology that's going to help you get there, right? If we don't know those things before, selecting the technology is really premature. And most of us don't like a premature selection when it comes to that. So take these 3 tips where you understand those touch points, you focus on the feeling, and you reframe your process in selecting your technology and understanding your customer experience to focus again on the feeling, the goal, the output, and then last but not least is where the tool will come into play. Everybody, that is a wrap on the first episode of Humanize Automation. A couple of shout outs really quick here to my team at 2MM. Thank you so much for all the support and being the agency that helped me get this launched. To everyone who follows me on no matter what social platform that is on, and hint, look me up at Dynamic Jill. You'll find me in almost every place you can imagine. Thank you for being part of this community and part of this conversation. I'm so excited to go into the next episode where those 4 areas of customer experience that I zoomed through real quick, the discovery, engagement, execution, and continuation, I will actually be detailing those for you in the next episode. So again, 2 foundational episodes here, episodes 1 and episode 2, where we spell out a lot of things about what humanizing automation means, tips and frameworks for doing it, and understanding your customer experience. So then when I bring the amazing lineup of guests that I have for you on the show, you're going to be able to take their advice and put it into action even faster. Thanks again for joining me. We'll see you on the next episode.